Well, this morning we're going to talk about moms. We owe a lot to our moms. I was born at an early age and I'm still thankful. Some of you will get that later. Anyways, whether our mom is with us or our mom is not with us, whether we've had a fantastic mom or one where it's like we had our come to Jesus meetings, nonetheless, here we are. We're here because of mom. We're here because of what she did. And, looking back on all of our memories, if we went around the room, we wouldn't have enough time to share all the memories we have of mom. When my mom passed away, it was, you start going through the things that families go through, and you start, you're dealing with endowments, you're dealing with, well, not endowments so much, but you're dealing with annuities and life insurance policies, and you start seeing family showing their true color, and you start hearing from relatives. You're like, I haven't heard from you in months and years, and now you want this, and on it goes. And I remember it got down to me, and and my brother and I'm like, and I remember telling my dad, honestly, whatever is fine, but I want the photo archive. I want the photos. I'm a photo guy. I love having that. And so I got them all. This went down to get them from my parents' house, and Dad already made 10 trips to Goodwill with Teen Challenge thrift store, with things that he was weeding out. And I'm like, oh, put the brakes on. He was, because he knew he wanted to move up here. And so we all have these memories of our mom, and I pray that they're good memories. And then we have, we have other ladies that, could be our aunts, could be a friend's mom, that it all brings back so many good memories. And so I want to talk this morning about mothers, simply a Mother's Day message, and why we're so thankful for you. Of course, it's obvious why we're thankful for you, but I want to talk about it on a little more biblical basis, because there's quite a few things that moms bring to the table. I see it, maybe you're this way. The girl in the family, the daughter in the family, is usually daddy's girl, okay? Not all the time, but for the most part. And boys are typically mama's boys, okay? And we see that at times too. Again, not all the time, but I can say for a fact, I was a mama's boy through and through. And it was something that, you look at a mom's love, you look at a mom and what she provides, and there's that bond there. There's that bond that takes place. And so there's quite a few things that a mother brings. And the first one is that there is the gift of a mother's love. In Proverbs chapter 31, of course, the flagship scripture for talking about godly women, is that she opens her mouth with wisdom and teaching of kindness and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. So a mother's love, it manifests in wisdom and kindness. Wisdom and kindness is the stuff that we see in this passage of scripture as we read in Proverbs. It is a guiding light in a children's life, teaching values, morals, and love through daily examples. When we end, and periodically throughout the year, when we end Eternal Explorers for the season with the rocket launch, I always try to make it a point to say, thank you, parents, for making this a part of your kid's life. Because we're all busy. Moms are busy, dads are busy. We all have things going on. I look back at my own upbringing. Dad had a full-time job, worked a part-time job at night. Mom worked full-time. Either it was babysitting in the house, and she usually had 3 or 4 little ones running around, or she was a waitress at Peter Piper Pancake House, right downtown Wauwatosa on the corner. Got shut down because of critters. Anyways. But she was a waitress there. But you know what? Every Wednesday night, magically, they had off. It was their night. They had off. Why? Because it was church. And they made sure that we were at Royal Rangers. They were in the adult study. They were, Sunday mornings. It's just, we got to church. It's what we did. And I look at all those sacrifices that a mom makes in order to do these things. Maybe we have some moms in here where there's food on the table and everything's done and everyone's fed. Mom even had a little bit, but she wants some more. And then inevitably somebody asks for that last thing. And the mom goes, no, go ahead, have it. There's an instinct in moms where they just are protectors. They make sure everybody's taken care of. There's a lot of truth in that movie, The Christmas Story, where Ralphie and Randy and the dad are sitting at the table, and mom's about to sit down, and Ralphie goes, Can I have another portion? And then you hear the narrator saying, "Now, my mom has not had a warm meal in probably 13 years," that sort of thing. It's because moms watch out for their kids. And the Proverbs 31 woman that we read about here is known for her strength. She's known for her dignity and nurturing spirit. Mothers embody these qualities when they cultivate their household with care and teach their children with loving words. The fact is, with care and loving words. So when I think of care and loving words, why do I think of a yardstick? Or why do some of us think about spoon therapy? Okay. These sort of things. This is going to hurt me the more than it's going to hurt you. I don't think so, Mom. And of course we would catch it from Dad. Dad was just fast and furious and blew his top and whack across the rear end, and away we go. Mom, we had a little advantage. Okay. Where I was skinnier, shorter, fast. Mom was a big woman. Okay. She was a big lady. I always felt bad for kids with skinny moms because they never got a good mom hug the way my mom could hug. It was like, you got a hug. And if you're lucky, you got a few pats to go with it. Okay. And so my mom, when we got in trouble, it was like, okay, I'm fast, Mom. And so she would just wield that yardstick like Julia Childs with a sword, She'd whip that thing out and she'd just start swinging that thing, and like, whoo. But looking back on it, our society has gotten different opinions on parenting from the 70s, even 60s and 80s. Okay. I went all over there. I should have said 60s, 70s, 80s. But I'm thankful for that. My brother and I, we've talked often about those days of being brought up, and we can unequivocally say we deserved every one of those things. Man, I was a jerk to my brother. I just saying, I could get away with anything. Little Bobby, and it just had that persona. I could get away with anything. And so if I wanted my brother to get in trouble and he's sitting next to me, all I have to do is slap my hand like a loud clap really hard and be like, Jack, don't do that. It hurt. And Mom would come or Dad would come running out and just clobber him. I'm like, that sort of thing. What loving Christian brothers do. Okay. And then, and so moms, you set the tone. Some of the funnest moments I had in the house were with Mom. Some of the heaviest things that we went through was Mom helped us through it. Dad was a provider. He was always out, always earning money, keeping the house stable. We never owned a house. They always rented. It's just how it was. But when we look back on the stories of our moms, the fact is, we have a lot to be thankful for. I love that in Proverbs 31. She's known for her strength. I mean, I'm sorry, guys, but when we get a cold, we don't handle it so well. I literally remember a Christian guy, that when he'd get a cold, he would lay in bed. And if he had a fever, it was even worse. He would lay in bed. He was like 60 some years old. And he'd sing church hymns a cappella about going on to glory. Okay. So I was like, yeah, okay. And I look at my wife, and this is true of a lot of them. You gave birth, you're doing jobs, you're doing all this stuff. Like, man, anything I can do to make my wife's life easier, I'm doing it. I'm just doing it. I'm a romantic. I will do things like that. And, just to help out around the house, because they are amazing people. But this love is a reflection of God's unwavering love for us. Tender, yet strong, and unfailing, and patient. Well, my mom wasn't very patient. Well, how far did you push her? Okay. There comes a breaking point. Okay. Moms are patient people, but everyone, you get pushed and pushed and pushed enough. And it's like, that's all I remember of my mom. Okay. Well, then you probably weren't the saint child growing up, and in some cases, you were. So point number 2 is the sacrifice of a mother. Isaiah 49:15 says, can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has borne? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. You see, motherhood is marked by selflessness and sacrifice. And we have some amazing moms in this room. The way I see you function with your kids, the way I've seen you function with your older kids, the way I've seen you function, in so many ways. We have amazing parents here. Parents that bend over backwards. My friends and I, they're out in the missionary field now. But when we first got married and they first got married, we'd get together at their house now and again. And we just knew how to parent. I was the best parent ever until I had kids. It's true. I could tell my youth group parents, I had 85 kids in the youth group. I'd have a youth group parent meeting and I would just lay it out like this, I wasn't even married at that point. And so our friends that we would get together with, we kind of made an unofficial pact that when we're not going to be those parents that get weird when they have kids. Okay. You know what I mean? I'm not going to become weird when we have kids. We did. Yep. We became very weird. All right. And the fact is, they became weird. Kids, you got to understand this. There is no manual for parents on how to parent kids. There isn't. All we are is a grown-up version of you. That's all we are, is a grown-up version of you. We've learned from our parents. We learn from books we may read. We learn from teachings that we might hear. We learn from things what to do, and we learn from things what not to do, okay? That wasn't a good idea, okay? But we still have fun. There's still there's still that kid in there that likes to have fun with the kids as well. However, Isaiah's comparison reminds us that even if human love falters, God's love never does. So we do have those moments that are hurtful. We do have those moments where your parent lets you down. We do have those moments when you remember mom wasn't at her best, said some things she shouldn't, took things a little too far physically with punishment, maybe walked out. I don't know what the case is. However, it's a person that did their best. And so when we go through those times when we remember all of those memories, if they're great, amazing, praise the Lord, thank God for them. If they're rough and you're like, even this message is kind of like, for me, we got to remember that God's love never falters. It never fails. Yet a mother's love strives to imitate that divine compassion, going beyond mere obligations to heartfelt devotion. I know there's times when a mom will just say, I'm done, I need a break. But she's not giving up. They just need a break. They need time away. They need to be able to call she needs to be able to call some of her friends and say, let's go out. My wife, every once in a while, they'll get the sisters together and her mom, and they'll go do a girls' weekend. We all need breaks in life. But this sacrifice is a powerful testament to the strength of maternal love and its lasting impact in family and community life. There's that bond that happens when it's just true. And dad can do his best to try to make that same bond happen, but there is something there that God hardwired together that makes that bond very, very solid. And so if a kid has a person that they call mom, there is a special bond there. So there is the role of a mother as a nurturer and protector. Psalms 127:3 says, children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from him. So children are blessings entrusted to mothers as gifts from God. And it comes in different ways. You've heard our adoption story. Okay, our kids have heard about it too, so it's okay to talk about. But there's the adoption story. How did we get to that point? Well, we were told that we weren't going to have our own children. Okay, that's not a fun doctor's appointment to leave. And so Tracy has that maternal instinct. All mothers do. You even see it in little girls, little babies. they carry around their little dolls and they hold them just right. And boys are just like grabbed by the head and, whatever. But little girls, they hold it right. They do everything right. They make sure, little bottle, all that stuff. God has hardwired women to be that way. And so in our story, Tracy desperately wanted to be a mom. And so she literally prayed, God, if it's your will that we adopt, because she started hearing rumblings about it and stuff, other people adopting and whatnot, then God, you have to, and she put it on me. Careful here. She said, then God, you need to speak to my husband on his terms. That's a bold prayer, by the way. That's a very bold prayer. You're going to tell God what to do, how to do it, to talk to Bob. Okay? He's just Bob. You don't have to worry about him a whole lot. And so within a day or two, well, I'm sitting at Torberg's parking lot. Tracy had to run in for something, and all of a sudden my phone, a Facebook message shows up. It's from a friend of ours that we've known her since her teen years. And she shot me a message saying, hey, this is where I'm at. Can't raise them. Would you be willing to adopt? That, by the way, is speaking to me on my own terms. Facebook message or a text message out of the blue. Okay, he got my attention. Tracy got in the car. I showed her that. And of course, as Christians, right, we have those moments where we say, let me go pray about it. And I sometimes say that in a snarky way. That if you ever ask me for something obscure and I say, let me go pray about it, take it as a no, okay? I just don't have the nerve to say no. And so we all have those moments. And Tracy got in the car and I read her the message and her jaw dropped. And I said, not to sound less than spiritual, but this isn't something I need to pray about. Just isn't. I said, you prayed for it. And I pointed at her, you prayed for this. I wasn't mad. I was joking around. I said, you prayed for this. He spoke to me on my terms. What else is there to pray about? When the Lord speaks, you listen. We hear that over and over again. And so we went with it. And so we got James on 2 weeks' notice. Literally, we met him at Culver's. Okay. Yes. We met him at Culver's with Kayla. And then 2 weeks later, he came and lived with us. 4 months later, Emma was born. Got her right from the hospital. Yes. She was supposed to be born on April 29th. Came on April 17th. And Tracy and I were just getting ready to go see Monsters vs. Aliens in the theater. Good cartoon movie. And all of a sudden we get the phone call. I'm like, oh, I want to go see that movie. And her mom, Mary Lou, shows up all happy, giddy. So we took off. I'm like, oh, I'll have to wait for a video on that one. I ended up seeing my own monster. So, no. But then, the Lord follows through. When Tracy prays, I believe God listens wholeheartedly. I could share a lot of stories about her and her prayer life. But then the prayers continued. And ultimately, now you know the rest of the story. Noah was our own biological child. And I remember working on something in the garage. She comes out with 2 little pairs of clothing, girl and boy, and she goes, so which one is it? I didn't know. I'm like, Goodwill take both sets, I guess. It ends up, she's pregnant. So I say all of that. I share my story because a mother's love runs deep. No matter how old you are, guys, no matter how old we are, your mother, if she's still with you, is going to be caring about you. Yes, when a husband meets his wife, they leave the house, they start their own family, dynamics change. She's still your mom, okay? She's still your mom and still cares for you and wants to give you wisdom, even unsolicited opinions, all of these things. But you know what? Let them be a mom. Let them be a mom. So they provide a safe and loving environment where children can flourish in confidence and faith. You've heard about my grandma who said, "You're an Adams walks upright. They don't slouch," that sort of thing. My mom, pretty much the same way. Your mom, she invested in your life. Remember those things. And in this role, mothers are partners with God, fostering the next generation in his ways. So my final point is that the internal impact of a mother's love. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5 says, I'm reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I'm persuaded now lives in you also. Church world's really good about talking about something called a generational curse. Okay? Let's go church lingo here. Generational curse is simply your great grandma, your great grandpa were raging alcoholics. Your grandpa was an alcoholic then as well. This then trickled down to your dad that he was an alcoholic. And now you're struggling with it. That's what's called a generational curse, okay? I don't know how much octane there is behind that whole thing. That's a whole nother study. I'm using it as an example. But somewhere along the way in our family lineages, I'm sure it is true for many of us in this story, in this talk, is that somebody along the way broke that cycle. Why? Because they came to know who Christ was. And that ended. With my dad, alcoholism and abusiveness ended with my dad. He ended up getting saved. I think my mom had a little something to do with that when they met. But did he have a temper? Absolutely. But he broke that the generational curse. Our moms, when they are raised in a household of faith, that trickles down. So there's the generational curse, but I'm going to throw something called a generational blessing. For me, I know that my grandma, she was saved. She was part of a church, helped started all that stuff, raised her family in there, went through some of the most difficult moments in life. Husband died, left her with 8 kids. He died in a World War II ammunition plant explosion. Grandma was raising the rest of the kids up in Linden Station. Little 1-year-old Aunt Sharon had severe sore throat. And back in those days, there were old wives' tales about elixirs that would help a baby or a person with a sore throat. And so somebody gave her, it was like a mineral spirit or like a turpentine or something. And a 1-year-old passed away. That wasn't far off from her husband's passing, my grandpa Leo. So grandma yet stayed faithful to God through all of that. And every one of her kids were raised in knowing who God was. That trickled down to our family. That's trickling down to our family. So generational curses, Christians get hung up too much about that. Yeah, just this week I was talking to somebody about this generational curse thing. What if we talked more about the generational blessings that trickle down through families more so than the generational curse? It's like a bunch of guys that get together and start comparing scars, okay? Look at that scar I got right here. That's from, and the next guy's like, well, look at this scar right here. And the shirt goes up. Well, look at this scar. And he starts, I'm like, no, stop there. We don't need to know about that scar. Guys love sharing scar stories. It happened at the campground this weekend. They call him the mayor. He came up, he's like, look at this. And he pulled up his pant leg. His shin was like cut. He's like, I slipped with a power saw. I'm like, apparently, oh my gosh. He's out walking around. The guy's like 80 something years old. Awesome dude. But there's an eternal impact to a mother's love. Faith passed down through generations is one of the greatest legacies a mother can give. If you can sit and look back and say, my mom passed her faith on to me, praise the Lord. That means we're still going to have struggles as parents. But we know that God doesn't ever leave us. Even those most difficult moments. One of the most popular terms right now for adults is, I don't want to adult today. Well, I get it, but at the same time, guess what? Here we are. God's going to give you strength to get through those days. Mom, sometimes you wonder how's the next bill going to get paid? God's faithful. God is absolutely faithful. Don't know how this is going to get handled. God's faithful. You're a strong lady. Every one of you in this room. You're strong women. And God is faithful in providing wisdom and know how to get out of things. And this is where it's important for you, mom and dad, to teach your kids these things. Sometimes we can be too transparent. My parents were of the type where they kind of kept things that were really hard and difficult on the back burner. Why burden the kids with it? I get it. I'm glad they did that. But at other times, it's good for them to know, hey, you know what? We can't go out for ice cream tonight because things are that tight. It's okay for them to hear that, because then they see mom and dad are relying on God, and they're doing their part to do what they can as well. It's okay for kids to hear when mom's having a rough day. It's okay for them to hear when dad's having a rough day, because it helps kids understand it. And really, it prepares them for adulthood. Jenny came up to me in my youth group. Jenny and her friend Sam in Milwaukee. They were in my youth group when I started in 96. And they were just middle school, high schooler age. By the time I was done there after 8 years, they came back to visit the youth group. And they both walk up to me, Jenny and Sam walk up to me, and they visited the youth group, and they're looking around, they're like, we weren't ever like this, were we? I'm like, oh, absolutely. Every stinking bit of it. Fact is that we can look back on those things and we can ask the same question. Was I like that? You know, as a parent, was I like that as a kid? Yeah, it's being a kid, it's being an adult. But see how God brings us to every milestone in our life, how God brings us to each point. It's by passing through generations. Timothy's letter here highlights the enduring power of a mother's faith influencing her children and grandchildren. It's through a mother's faith that spiritual foundations are laid, guiding children toward a lifelong relationship with God. Every night, dinner around the table. If we forget to pray, mom will remember to pray. All of these things are important that a lot of you guys and moms are doing. It's through a mother's faith that spiritual foundations are laid, guiding children toward a lifelong relationship with God. I do believe wholeheartedly that kids get a glimpse of God's love through their mother's love for them, and through their dad as well. We'll talk about dads here in the next few weeks as well. But mothers inspire, they instill hope. You ever been to a kid's t-ball game? You ever been to a baseball game? You ever coached those teams? Been there, done that. And you're sitting there like, you can't say, but you're like, dude, I got to play you because it's rec league, but I don't want to play you because you're really bad. You know, that sort of thing. And who's up there at the gate, at the fence saying, you're awesome, you got it, you're the best at this, you are the MVP, mom. And the coach, and as a coach, I'm looking at her like, is that the same kid you're talking about? You know, but that's a mom's love, okay? I get it. For my mom, little Bobby could do no wrong. She was wrong, okay? For my mom, she saw things in Jake and I, that other people were like, you know, that sort of thing. But that's what moms do. They're our biggest cheerleaders. They're the ones that say, you got this. They're the ones that say, straighten up. My mom, she'd play piano on a Sunday morning, and if we're acting up, she'd somehow be playing the chords like Tamara does, and just hear it. You'd just hear the pop. And right away, you're like, straighten up, because it would echo in a big church. That's just how moms are. You moms have an instinct and a love for your kids. So moms inspire, instill hope, courage, and love through their belief, which shapes not only families, but it shapes a community and it shapes generations that come. You got here because somebody in your family laid a foundation. That generation is going to continue because you're investing in your family. You're being a lady of faith. You're being a woman that instills godly principles. Even when and if, let's not say when, but if a child goes astray and walks away from the faith, the foundation that you moms have laid will not return void. A child will always remember that. And we may not see it. If they walk away from the faith, we may not see that return for years. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people that have said, I remember that lesson. I remember that teaching. I remember mom praying. And eventually, people start settling down. Here's what I've seen as a trend. Kids grow up in church. Godly heritage, mom and dad raised them well. And in some cases, they hit the college age years and they go astray. They just leave. They may not go completely off the rails, but they're just kind of done with church, with God, and these things. And then they get married and they start thinking things through a little bit more. Parents, what's the turning point? Kids. All of a sudden, they start raising kids. And they start realizing how important church was to them. Because they start seeing all the influences that they're getting out in the world and from TV, from school, all that stuff. And they realize, my kids need a solid biblical foundation. And they come back to it. So we pray for our kids. Number one, that they don't go astray. But number two, that if they do, they come back to know who Christ is. But it all starts with the home, with mom laying a good foundation and the father supporting it as well. And if in today's generation world, there's a lot of separations, that at least whoever the kids are with is laying a solid foundation. We have an awesome task to do, parents, but even more so an awesome responsibility for moms, and we're thankful for you.